Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way.
I love you. Share my cause.
Who are you?
If I'm being recruited, this is a hell of a way to do it.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
Our conversation begins.
the little drummer girl is over. It's time for a little double cross.
Her name is Charlie.
Charlie. May I call you Charlie? You're wonderful.
She's an actress who's about to play the role of her life.
Who do I play?
Yourself.
She's being used by one side
You are one of them. You share their lives, their morals, their risks.
to deceive the other.
I offer you the hospitality of our revolution. Welcome.
She's become the bait in a game of brutality and betrayal,
You son of a... You killed him!
where nothing is what it seems
We both know who you are, right?
and no one is safe.
She's gone. Gone. We have a mission for you.
What makes you think they will use Charlie?
They won't trust her until she's killed.
And who kills Charlie? Us or them?
I want out, and I want out now!
The international bestseller is now the motion picture thriller of the year. Diane Keaton, The Little Drummer Girl.
All right, Pete.
We had a great time with the movie last week, don't you agree?
Oh, yes. The Spy
And
Who
I know-
Came In From the Cold. Great
yes,
stuff.
it was exceptional. And I know next week, both of us having seen the movie for next week, we're going to have a good time with that, I think.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Yeah. And given that Park Chan-wook actually did a 6-part miniseries of this one, Little Drummer Girl, I would like to ask you, do you think we should talk about that tonight?
The Park Chan-wook version?
Yeah, I haven't even seen it, but I'd really rather talk about that.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. It was brought up on our Discord group. Why did you guys pick this movie? Why did you pick the 1984, The Little Drummer Girl, to be part of your John le Carré series instead of some of his better-known films that are probably worth remembering more than that particular one? And that was a good question because initially it wasn't on our list. I think we had talked about The Constant Gardener or The Russia House.
Yep.
Or one of his more recent ones. Although I think we were trying to spread it out over kind of a longer period of time so it wasn't all clustered.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we settled on this one because neither of us really knew anything about the story. Neither of us had seen it. And the fact that George Roy Hill is directing it, and we've talked about him several times in the show, we like him. And Diane Keaton's in it. We like her. Klaus Kinski is an interesting actor. It sounds like, with all of that, a promising film to include in our series. And it's a 6.1 on the IMDb stars, which, fits
Crests
your
right above.
Yeah, fits your 6-star rule.
The 6-star rule, exactly.
So all of that led to a film that should fit just fine in our series. And, let's face it. Okay, it wasn't the best film, but hey, at least now it's checked off of our list, right?
It is checked off of our list. And I've seen a lot of other le Carré films, I think, now that I'm kind of going through not a lot. I've seen enough to know that I'm a fan of most of the adaptations. And I was thinking it might be interesting to look into why we feel like this one doesn't hold up to those. And I am ill-equipped to do that because I've read so few of the books.
I have read none of his books, and I think that it's an interesting series to jump into without having read anything.
Yeah.
I feel like I probably should start reading some of his stuff. I actually have started Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I just haven't gotten around to finishing it, but I've been enjoying it so far.
Well, here's what I know of the books is that they are incredibly challenging to adapt. They're like they're like the Jack Ryan books, right? I mean, they're just incredibly dense with craft and character, a ton of characters, crazy big casts requirements if you're going to do, such an ambitious adaptation. And that makes le Carré incredibly challenging to adapt. That's my understanding of it. Now, in what I have read about the adaptation here, they tried deeply to get as much of the book into the movie as they possibly could. And point number one, my hunch is that makes it feel like a sloppy adaptation. That it was just, there was too much. They tried to chew too many marbles.
So I walked into this film, I will acknowledge, putting this film at a disadvantage because immediately before I watched this film, I did watch Park Chan-wook's 6-part miniseries that he had done for television a couple years ago with Florence Pugh and playing the Diane Keaton role. I do think that Loring Mandel, who adapted it, he did a pretty good job of adapting the actual content. He gets the points in there. Everything is largely there. What really is missing, and I hate to say it, but I feel like George Roy Hill really was not the right director for this because I don't feel like in what I've seen from his films, and we've talked about The Sting and Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid on this show, he handles a sense of comedy in his stories really nicely as far as kind of the way kind of comedy action. I haven't seen anything of his that really stands out as a heavy kind of mystery or an action thriller sort of thing. Like I don't get a lot of the sense of thrills from the films I've seen of him, from him. And so I feel like when I watched this film, a lot of it felt a lot more jovial and casual than I feel like a spy thriller should have. I feel like Loring's script had some of the elements in there. Like I could see, especially after having watched the longer version, when I could really see the time they took to develop the relationships and the love stories and the way that everything folded across kind of the entire scope of everything. This one, those pieces are there, but I don't think Diane Keaton is fully bringing all of the stuff to the screen that she needs to. And I really don't think that George Roy Hill is putting the sense of a kind of presence that he needs to in context of this story when he is kind of directing this and adapting it into something that should be full of life.
Isn't that interesting too? That he essentially sucks the intensity or the sense of threat or impending doom out of this movie. That's where I really struggle. But I think that the spirit of kind of cavalierness in this film that is not necessarily in the hands of George Roy Hill, but in well, I guess it's deeply in what I consider a miscast in our central character. I think Diane Keaton was the wrong person for this movie. I felt like she was drunk for most of the film. I feel like we didn't get a sense of her having any intellectual agency in this character of Charlie at all. Like, it was just, her performance was thrown on screen, and as a result, I think she just sort of sucked any of that intensity, that threat, out of all of these intense and threatening situations. I really enjoyed watching in her first performance Dana Wheeler-Nicholson as Katrine, and this was, we only see her for, I think, a couple of scenes. Right? She drops off a briefcase, it's a bomb, but she looked much more the part to me and she carried herself in a different sort of demeanor than in such a way that I think was less distracting than Diane Keaton. I think she was just unbearable in this movie for me.
Diane Keaton brings a certain Diane Keaton presence to a film, I feel, and in this particular one, she has such that kind of, that casual kind of dingy nature to her
Daffy.
Anyway. Yeah. It really comes across that way. In this case, it was kind of frustrating that it played in a way where I'm just like, I don't feel like, I get it, you're supposed to be kind of this young actress, but it just doesn't come across in a way that worked for me. And that was frustrating, especially knowing that the role as written was kind of designed for a British actress in her early 20s, like 21, 22, is really kind of the zone that the story was written for. And knowing that Diane Keaton walked into this nearly 40 years old, I could tell very easily that she was pretty old for this part and acting too young for it. And it just didn't work for me.
No, you know what's interesting though about that? Like, what is it about her performance in this film that I lose from her performance in the Godfather movies? I mean, would you agree that there is a notable difference in her presence on screen between these two families?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's obviously a different type of story.
Right.
In this particular case, I feel it's an interesting comparison. I hadn't really thought about it. I guess in the Godfather films, I feel that she's not as unfocused. Like, I feel like she's a little more of a focused character. She's not necessarily in line with everything that Michael is doing in the film. And she ends up, as she kind of pieces everything together, she smartens up and is really able to figure out everything going on. And that really comes clear over the course of the three films, particularly those first two, specifically when she's a younger actress. She also wasn't the lead, and maybe that's part of it. She was a smaller part of those stories as they were being told, largely about the men. In this particular case, I mean, she's carrying this film, and we're relying on her as kind of this actress struggling in this world to try to navigate it and figure out what's going on, who to trust, how to play the character, all these different things. And I just felt like there were a lot of times where I'm like, she wasn't always making the right choices the way that she was playing the role. And sometimes when you see her playing it, it just comes across in a way where I'm like, well, are you taking any of this seriously? I can't tell because the way that you're coming across on screen.
That's the sense that I got, that it was like every single scene was another opportunity for workshop. Like we're just trying some things out. The sequences where she's being interrogated by Mossad, for me at one point it's laughable. They're all sitting in a room and they're kind of trying to be nice, and then they're being really intense. And I just feel like I'm in an improv workshop. It just was just so daffy and loose and carefree, I think was the word you used. I like that. And that just did not deliver on any of the intensity, the severity, the sobriety of, In From the Cold last week, and what I know of some other of the John le Carré films.
Right.
I really struggled with it.
Just as playing, director and recasting the way that we think would make sense. Because Florence Pugh was 22 when she played the character in the TV show, and so that's fit. That's
legit.
That totally fit. Plus, she's actually British, and it's written for a British actress. I don't think it's a huge loss to have her American. It doesn't change things too much. I think it ends up being okay. Although I can't help but feel like it just made more sense to have an actual British actress there when I watched her. But just as two options, these are two British actresses who were 21 in 1984 when this was made.
Oh, we're playing a game right now.
We're playing a game, yeah.
Oh, that was a terrible setup. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I'm setting this up in a bad way. So here we go.
All right.
Two options for you. Nicolette Sheridan or Natasha Richardson. Both 21 in 1984.
Nicolette Sheridan.
Nicolette Sheridan's definitely the more blonde bombshell sort of look. I have a harder time seeing her on stage in kind of the British roles and stuff.
I really do.
Because she definitely was doing a lot more of the modeling and everything. So maybe she's not as good a choice. But certainly, when you look at Natasha Richardson and you see images of her in the early 80s, and you go, oh yeah, that's the sort of person that I feel could have been in this role that would have worked really well. Really well.
I think you're right. I think she's probably the one. I look at Natasha Richardson, I can't shake her, or Nicolette Sheridan, I can't shake Desperate Housewives, and that sort of defines who she was for me. So, but yeah,
I just feel like that puts it in a place where I feel like things are going to move a little better. We still have the George Roy Hill problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, we don't erase the George Roy Hill problem.
No.
Yeah.
Here was my question that I was going to ask you, though, because in context of kind of our bigger questions about these stories, this one is a little bit of a different type of story for John le Carré, because it's less about kind of the intricacies of what's going on with all the spy ins and outs and everything. It's definitely more kind of a terrorism story, and I thought it was it's an interesting one to look at in the context of the stories that we have in this, certainly with these three, because The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, while not a George Smiley specific story, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which is a George Smiley specific story, both are spy films with a lot of kind of just focusing on the convoluted way that the world of spy works, right? That's what that's all about. This one is really a kind of a story about a group that is trying to stop a terrorist act by infiltrating. And you get it's a larger story about kind of how acting and love and everything kind of are such an essential element of all of this stuff that's going on. And it ends up being more of a character story, I felt, the journey of Charlie over the course of this. And so I guess that's, I don't know if it's a big question, but I mean, do you feel like by changing the focus of the story to have it kind of more this way, we're getting kind of what we expect out of a John le Carré story? Or do you feel like it's just a little bit of a sidestep from what we were expecting and wanting out of one of his tales?
Well, this is why I feel like I'm ill-equipped to answer that question completely because I haven't read the book. But as a film, I think that is a central failing because it directs this spy thriller as if it's a rebound movie off of The World According to Garp, right? This is putting the onus of responsibility in Hill's camp. Like, it was directed as if this is a relationship movie inside the mechanics of spycraft, and the weight of the narrative needs it to be more about the mechanics of spycraft. So I struggle with that for sure.
Just to clarify my point, though, I mean, this story and the one in the 6-hour version, it's the same story. I mean, it really, there's not big changes made. It's obviously there's a lot more kind of fleshing out within the longer version. But essentially this, I mean, it is a fairly decent adaptation that kind of hits the points of the story. I just don't feel like there's any convolutions. Like there's nothing that's, you're never wondering who's the, is there a double agent or anything like that? We pretty much know. We've got the good guys on one side. We've got her in the middle, asked by the good guys to pose as a bad guy, and then we have the bad guys on the other side. And that's pretty straightforward through the whole thing. There's never any point where we're like, ooh, that was a double agent? I had no idea. Like, that never comes up. So it's a pretty straightforward story.
Well, I guess that's what I was missing, right? Not having seen the 6-hour thing. I think you maybe it's just that he directed a bad romance. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe it's as simple as that. Like, I don't feel like their relationship merits 2 hours and 10 minutes of the, like you say, lack of convolutions. What I got out of this movie was this weirdly doe-eyed, too old 20-something in a mid-30s shell fell in love with a guy that deeply did not merit it, and she was led astray in so many different directions without any sort of culpability, any like rational believability, and they tried to hide the shortcomings of her meanderings behind this relationship stuff, or in the guise of, her driving a bomb car across the border or whatever. Like, it just, none of it felt like it earned, it earned intense treatment on screen.
And it's really frustrating because essentially at its core, I mean, and it's so hard to talk about this coming off of the much longer, much better version, because I keep referencing points in my head. I'm like, oh, wait, no, that's not in this version. I have to remember that. But the whole idea
it's not in this version, but I have to imagine that, here's a thing that is in this version, and they spent 45 minutes on what got 2-minute treatment. I have to imagine those kinds of things happen, like that we actually get to see and live in some of the discomfort of the relationship for a time. Oh,
certainly. And that's what I really loved. Okay, like, here's an example. We have a moment in this film where Charlie is, she's sleeping with the man she's fallen in love with, who she knows as Joseph, we know as Getty, or the Israeli team called Getty. They're sleeping together, and as they're laying there, she's kind of walking through his chest and kind of going, where'd you get this scar from? And looking at all his scars and kind of getting to know him through the scars, right? It's kind of a cute scene. In a scene that doesn't carry a lot of weight other than it's a romance scene and they're finally getting it on, right?
Great. I am big in favor of those scenes.
Later in the film, we have a similar scene where she's now laying in bed with Khalil, essentially at the direction of the Israelis, right? This is kind of at the end of the film. She's now with him, and for a lot of reasons. Anyway, the specifics are she's laying with him and she's doing something similar. She's looking at his body and kind of asking him about the different scars that he has on his body, right? Those two scenes play as, I suppose you could say, are meant to play as a setup and payoff for the way a relationship is the way she's involving herself with these men and creating these relationships and falling in love with them through this particular intimate act where she's kind of looking at their bodies and kind of talking through the different scars and getting to know them. And it becomes a real personal, intimate connection between them. and it's meant to be kind of a reflection. So we see her doing it with the man she loves at the beginning, and then we see her doing it with the man she's pretending to love at the end of the film.
Sure.
It's an interesting reflection because we see her doing that, but the way that it's set up, there's no drama in the way that any of it is connected, because at the beginning, it's just like a sex scene. Like they fall down and finally get to it, and they have this little conversation. And at the end, it kind of comes out of nowhere, right? We know she's in bed with him. We know she's supposed to go take the batteries out of her clock or her radio, so that's the signal for them to come get him. But instead, she's kind of going into all this sort of stuff. And so we're like, okay, so does she love this guy now? Like, why is she going through all of this right now? There's never been a connection developed with Khalil. So we don't have that same reference point referencing back to that first one where it was theoretically a kind of a love moment. And so this is an example of how this film doesn't treat those moments as with the weight that they should have to allow for the real connection that the film is trying to make by putting one earlier and later in the film. You know what I mean?
How did they handle? Yeah. And I don't want you to belabor this point in particular, but I'm curious how you would contrast I assume those important sequences in the series.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about the series specifics, but
I really do.
Tell me more about Florence.
I love her.
I have this is total side note, but as I was getting ready to come in here, I ran out into the kitchen to talk to my wife real quick, and she was watching a video. I'm like, "Oh, what are you watching?" She's like, "Oh, Florence Pugh just posted a video on Instagram Live. She's at home making butternut squash." So she was like watching her make butternut squash. I'm like, that's really adorable. I bet Diane Keaton's not doing cute videos like that.
No, what's Diane Keaton doing? Nothing, because she treats the world with such.
But that film, and this is where you get by allowing a film to really breathe by doing a 6-hour miniseries.
Yeah,
you have time to develop the relationship with Joseph at the beginning. So when they finally have that intimate moment when they're in bed together, it really means something. And you really see Charlie falling for this guy. And it makes so much sense. And then in the end, when Charlie goes off, or I shouldn't say the end, in the middle, when she goes off to train in Lebanon and kind of starts falling for that side, and she finally meets Khalil, he is a mesmerizing figure. I mean, I was falling in love with him. It was so enrapturing just watching this guy. He had amazing screen presence. And it was easy to see Charlie, like, all of a sudden start clicking with him and find a connection with him. And when they have that intimate moment together, it becomes an actual intimate moment. And you see this parallel between the two that allow for you to kind of get this real sense of this journey of love and how she's kind of creating. I mean, the whole thing is about her, playing the theater of the real, and how she does so much of that through herself and not by necessarily finding the ideals. I mean, they don't pick her because she believes in the things that they believe in. They pick her because she's an actress and she can kind of create these emotions and fall in love. And that's what it's really about, is being able to fall in love with the person that you're opposite, even if you don't love them. But it's this sense of this actress who really is kind of believing in this role that she's playing. And it works so well in that film or in the longer version. And that's what I end up missing here is when I see these moments, part of it is the fact that it is rushed 2 hours, but I feel like George Roy Hill doesn't know how to handle romance, doesn't know how to handle those intimate moments. So when we see Joseph and Charlie having an intimate moment, I don't feel like there's a connection there. Plus, he was horribly cast, and I wouldn't fall in love with him either. It was, it was really hard.
Well, and that's, I think, a big challenge of the romance, right? Is that neither of these relationships were earned. They were both out of just a weird stereotype mechanic. I think the first one was that weird sort of love at first sight kind of thing. There was a little bit of mistaken identity and a little bit of you're a hunk on the beach and wow, that mustache. And then the second one was, I know what you're going to ask me to do. And it was sort of I don't know, a little bit more Stockholm syndrome-y, like it was just confusing, but neither of them felt earned to me. And and perhaps it, I want to own my own ignorance. I don't know enough about the PLO Israel, like the sort of the political scenario at the time in the 70s. I don't know enough about it. I know it's bad and it's hard and there a lot of people died and it's also very complicated. And I sure as hell didn't learn anything about it here.
Yeah, this film is really relying on you to kind of know what's going on in the real world at the time. And same with le Carré's novel, because it came out just a year before this. But I think that it is kind of banking on that. And honestly, my understanding is that when the book came out, it was fairly controversial because by presenting both sides in a fair way, he presented both of them, the good and the bad, the justice on both sides and how awful both sides are. And because of that, he offended both the Palestinians and the Israelis. And it's interesting that the film largely does the same thing. You kind of see the good and bad of both sides, And I thought that was pretty interesting. But it was a period when there were a lot of films coming out about everything going on in this part of the world, and from more serious fare to kind of Chuck Norris sorts of movies. It was all over the place. It just was a fodder for projects because of the conflict. And I'm not as up on it either. I just know it was quite an issue. And like you said, this is not the film where you're getting anything out of.
There are a lot of people who are, I'm sure, working hard in this movie, even if it doesn't come across on screen.
Sure.
We talk a little bit about some of the other people that we were excited to even see.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to talk crew first or cast?
Well, I'd very much like to talk just cast because of how much I love Klaus Kinski. And when he is like, I don't know. There's something about this sequence where he comes up to Joe and he's like tucking his shirt in and just starts slapping him about the head and face. And I thought, there's Klaus. There's Klaus. You know what? I don't even care what this movie's about anymore. Show me more Klaus going crazy on a guy.
Yeah, he is a peculiar actor. And, I haven't seen much of his work. I think most of the stuff I've seen from him was stuff that he did, like Fitzcarraldo, Aguirre, the Wrath of God, a lot of the Werner Herzog types of films, I don't think I've seen, I'm looking through his list. I don't know if I've actually seen him in anything except those movies with Herzog. Is that possible? Could I have not? Well, I guess, he had a bit part in For a Few Dollars More.
Yeah.
So technically, I saw him in that one.
Nosferatu.
I haven't seen it.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
That's where I have him. Is Nosferatu and Fitzcarraldo.
Fitzcarraldo is a great film. What a crazy man he is in that one. I really enjoy that one.
Yeah.
But that's it. I don't think I've seen anything more than that and Aguirre, the Wrath of God.
One that you shouldn't see, but I think you, of all people, might actually like it is Crawl Space, and I can't believe I've seen it and you haven't. But it is it's a kind of a locked house Nazi horror with Klaus Kinski, which now I think should put that right at the top of your list.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
He does not crest the 6-star.
Oh. Good to know. Good to know. I guess my question with him was when he popped up on screen, I was like, does he strike me as somebody from Israel? Does he fit with, this kind of mishmash of these people that had, come to, I think we meet them all do we meet them in Munich the first time? I can't remember where we meet them.
Yeah, where did they take, I don't know. I lost track of where they took her and put her in the apartment. And
they when he grabs her, I guess that was Greece, because they went to Athens to see all the stuff. So it's Athens where they all meet her, or she meets them, but I can't remember if we had seen them before and where it was. I want to say it was Munich or somewhere in Germany, but anyway, I don't know. I guess because I associate him so much specifically with just kind of Germany, I guess I don't associate him with Israel, but I guess there's no reason I can't. It was just an odd choice because he clearly has a German accent, and just, maybe that was what it was that kept,
do you think,
tripping me up?
Yeah, he there was no effort to hide that.
No,
and I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe that's a common accent for Mossad in the Middle East.
Maybe
I don't know. Anyway, he was fun to see in this movie. The other one that really stuck out to me, and I found myself thinking, this is a guy I want to see more of right now. It's David Suchet as Mr. Bein. Because we're obviously fans of his, and he is poorly used in this movie. Definitely need to go see some other great movies. Even some other, what's the Christie character that he is so widely known for?
Poirot,
right?
Yeah.
Hercule Poirot.
Yeah.
He's fantastic all around.
Yeah, he's underutilized in this film.
Yeah.
We've talked about him on the show, The Bank Job.
That's right.
He popped up in that one.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you had mentioned Dana Wheeler, right?
I did, yeah.
You mentioned
Wasn't that
her.
fun to see her show up, right? Just right in the beginning.
She popped up, and I was like, I totally recognize her. And I was like, where do I recognize her from? And they're like, oh, she's in Fletch.
Yeah.
That's my reference point for her. I know she's done a lot of other stuff, but it'll always be Fletch.
It'll always be Fletch. And that was great.
And it's another bit part. I don't know. It's frustrating, again, to have watched this after the other version, because I'm like, oh, her character has a lot more fun in the longer version. Like, she gets to be a little crazy. She doesn't have much. Which is what I was
looking for. Like, the moment she walks out of that building and it cuts to them with that quick cut of them eating breakfast, and then she's in the street, she's hugging the driver, and the thing blows up and she doesn't have any sort of emotional reaction. I thought, okay, I'm going to anchor on her as a tool of the antagonists in this movie, and it's going to be great. I'm very excited because she is a character of opportunity. And then, like the wind, she's just gone. She's gone. Terrible.
And this is a curse of watching older films, because we know who she is, but at the time, this was her screen debut, so nobody would have known who she was. They would have just seen, oh, she's kind of this cute blonde who they have involved in this. But now, in retrospect, we're able to say, oh, she's obviously going to be doing more because of who she is. But
I don't necessarily think that's true in this movie. I think it's okay to have this character, because she's a cute blonde and does some terrible things. Those two elements make her an interesting character of contrasts, right? It makes her a great villain. And in that regard alone, who cares that she was in Fletch? Obviously we do, but who cares? She would have been better used in this movie, and I think it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah,
she was token villainess.
Yep, I agree.
Shameful. Who are you excited about?
Well, the one I'm most excited about, I'll be honest, more so than anyone else we have on the list, is a bit part, and it is good old Bill Nye.
He's a kid.
Had so much fun seeing little baby Bill. Show up in this movie.
Bill. Yeah, I agree.
Such a little fella.
Yeah, he's still tall drink of water Bill, but lots of hair. That was fun.
Yes. Absolutely. No, what a nice surprise that was. I always love Bill. He's great to see. And, he doesn't have a lot to do here, but just enough to do something interesting. So I had a fun time with that.
This was an able cast that I feel like, in short, was just used meekly.
It was an okay cast, honestly. Like Yorgo Voyagus. I'm not exactly sure how to say his name.
I'm going to say that, yeah.
I felt like he could have been a little more. I wasn't thrilled with his performance as Joseph. I just was like, okay. I mean, you were fine, but is that the way that they wrote the part? Certainly I feel like that's part of it. I feel like they could have done him a little more service than to boost him up and give him a little more reason to kind of actually fall for her, because initially, like, he falls for Charlie clearly to lure her in. He's kind of like the lure to bring her in to this whole thing, but he clearly falls for her. And that's the story, the side of the story that I never really got enough out of this version.
I can see that. I feel like he was an appropriate tool of the era. He was an 84 hunk, and that's, I bought that. I feel like his part was written thinly, but yeah. I never got a sense that he wasn't up to it. And I feel like he could have been more believable in that sort of Middle Eastern Tom Selleck kind of way.
Yeah, maybe. If the script was a little stronger with the way that his character was portrayed and the directing was a little stronger, maybe. Same thing with Sammy Frey, who plays Khalil. Like, interesting face. I was really intrigued by this guy, but in no way did I fall for him as much as I fell for the same character in the TV movie version. Like, he had some presence, but I never got to know him enough for it to make sense to me.
How did you feel about his big twist at the end? Like, did you believe the twist? Were you surprised when it turns out the van driver was, the guy?
I mean, I obviously knew it was coming.
Obviously you knew, right?
Yeah, I knew it was coming. I honestly like that whole twist in the story. I think it works that he is this mysterious figure who is posing as other people to kind of keep his eye on her and to really get a read. I think it works in context of the story.
I did. I mean, I guess I do too. Yes, I agree. I feel like by that point in the movie, it's just barreling toward the end, and she's in this kind of car switching, driving back and forth, and they're just that whole crazy experience when she's giving the briefcase to the professor, and they're trying to intercept it, and they rush her out, and they make her go through the motions of the lines, and then they get her back. The whole mechanic of the climax of that operation was lost on me. And that leads us to the climax of the film, where it turns out that, Mossad was going to have their way with all of these people that she had apparently started feeling an affinity for again. I just didn't feel like I bought it. And that was sad, because some of it was pretty gruesome. You'd expect, to feel more about that.
Well, as far as the crew goes, I feel like we should talk about a few of them.
Sure.
Wolfgang, I don't know, Trau?
Sure.
Is the cinematographer. And I don't remember, honestly, how much of his work we brought up when we talked about the Das Boot miniseries that we talked about the film version of that, obviously, on the show. But I felt like there was a kind of a gritty reality to the cinematography. I didn't have any real striking issues with it.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think I think it was shot well, but it was not shot to the level of sort of extremity that Man Who Came In From the Cold was. Like, I feel like that existed on the razor's edge of intensity, like using all of these great Dutch angles. And this movie, like, I didn't have any problems with it, but that's not great praise.
No, and I guess that's the funny thing, is I feel like the cinematography works. And it's funny that I bring up his work that he did on TV with Das Boot, because honestly, as I think about this some more, I felt like it fits well with kind of generic TV cinematography.
Yeah.
Like, and it's funny because cinematography now for TV has become so cinematic.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you watch the cinematography in Park Chan-wook's version of this. And I feel like it's so much more cinematic what he's doing in that particular film.
Par for the course.
It's so hard to deal with all these comparisons, but inevitably they're going to be there if people watch both versions.
And what would they think about the music?
Dave Grusin is definitely, I find, a composer who I like quite a bit, but his music feels very much a part of the era, very 80s. And I like elements of this particular score, but if I'm going to pick him, let me phrase it this way. If I'm going to pick a composer to write me a score for a spy thriller in the 80s, it would not be Dave Grusin. Like, it makes sense for Tootsie. His stuff's great there. And the Goonies, absolutely. It's fun, adventure, kid music and stuff. It really works. The Little Drummer Girl, I felt no energy from the music throughout the film. And all of a sudden it'd be like, dun, dun, dun. I'm like, oh, we're getting into a suspense moment here because his music, he's really kind of hitting it. It really didn't work for me.
Yeah, I regret to say, and maybe it's clear, I'm a straight up fan of Dave Grusin as a musician and as a composer, and not of this one. It just did not give me the joy that I get from, or the complexity, or certainly not of what we got in the score from last week, or the scores from some other le Carré. I mean, again, the Russia House, peak awesome score. So I guess I'm with you, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking through the films that he's composed, and I think if you go all the way back to 1975 when he did 3 Days of the Condor, that had some good elements that felt a little more thrilling to me. It worked a lot better. And then if you go forward all the way up to The Firm in 1993, another one that I felt had some good thrill, kind of that thriller tension music. I just don't feel this film carried any of that. So I think you got to go a decade in either direction to really find his music that actually fit with this type of movie.
The thing is, he's not, I think he's done some amazing stuff, but he is, like, his career as a musician is so much broader than just writing music for movies that,
Sure.
I tend to give him a lot more space to breathe. This was not a great one, and he's still stunning as an instrumentalist and a performer.
Oh, I mean, yeah, he's very much into kind of the jazz music, and everything that he can do. It's real great, but just in this context of this film, it doesn't work.
Also, Fabulous Baker Boys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But that is exactly the type of score that works so well for him, because it fits exactly with kind of where I think his heart lies.
That's writing a score for the central characters, which are him.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm exhausted. Bloomin' onion is what that is. Anybody else we want to talk about, or shall we talk about Janet Stevens?
So Janet Stevens, at the very end of the credits, you do see a note. It says, "Special thanks to Janet Stevens, 1950 to 1983." Which I thought was pretty interesting. And so I was like, who is this Janet Stevens? Janet Stevens, it turns out, was an American journalist, human rights activist, a translator, and a scholar of popular Arabic theater. She had lived in Beirut during the whole Lebanese civil war, and she kind of chronicled all the experiences of the refugees and just all of these massacres. She actually died in the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut on April 18th, 1983. So she was actually called by Palestinians the Little Drummer Girl, and she inspired her life and her work inspired John le Carré, who had befriended her, and because she had given him a tour of the area and everything, she had she had inspired him, befriended him, and was really kind of the nugget of the idea for this particular character, the Little Drummer Girl. And what's interesting is it on the flip side, you hear other things that inspired her. So that's the special thanks at the end. But then also Vanessa Redgrave was partly inspiration for this particular character. I can see John le Carré thinking about her as a British actress and being the one who could kind of fit into this. But then what's interesting is that he actually also was thinking about his half-sister, Charlotte Cornwell, and based it on her, she was an actress, and he actually hoped that she would get to play this part. But of course, they needed a big name and went with Diane Keaton. So, but anyway, interesting little tidbit for you.
Interesting little tidbit. How'd it do at the box office?
George Roy Hill had an even $20 million to put his Le Carré adaptation together, which is about $49.2 million in today's dollars. The movie was released October 19th, 1984, opposite Crimes of Passion, The Razor's Edge, Stop Making Sense, and Thief of Hearts. Unfortunately, this movie did not really find its audience, only earning $7.8 million at the domestic box office, or $19.2 million in today's dollars. Like last week, I couldn't find any information for international markets, so that leaves this film with an adjusted loss per finished minute of $227,000, unfortunately.
When was the last time we had a good, juicy, adjusted loss per finished minute?
A couple shows ago. Bamboozled.
Oh.
Sorry to say.
Okay. All right. Well, how to do an award season, right? You got this fantastic Diane Keaton. She's got to have won something, right?
She's awards material.
She's awards. That's right. She's a blank canvas for award money right there.
That's
Diane Keaton.
Yeah, Oscar winner. And George Roy Hill, Oscar winner.
That's right.
Well, this is I think speaks to how well this did not connect with people. It had no wins. Only one nomination. The nomination was at the Edgar Allan Poe Awards, where Loring Mandel was actually, this is odd, he was nominated for Best Motion Picture. And I'm assuming that's because it's the Edgar Allan Poe Awards, which are for writing. And so I'm assuming that it's just, they call it Best Motion Picture, even though it's the writer getting it.
Right.
Anyway, lost. The film that won was A Soldier's Story. Which is it's a pretty interesting film that Norman Jewison directed. It's not my favorite, but I think it's definitely better than this. The other film that lost to A Soldier's Story was Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh.
Yeah. An interesting pairing, those three films.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Might I suggest
set of
that
films to put together.
Somebody could do a little viewing trilogy of watching those three together and then wonder what the heck they just did.
Maybe just skip to next year.
Yes.
We had a wash this year. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. All right. Well, this is a great movie if you would like to be inspired to go watch The Sting or Butch Cassidy and maybe Annie Hall.
And maybe the Little Drummer Girl TV miniseries directed by Park Chan-wook.
I know that's going to be the next thing that I do. It's got to be on my list. I'm totally inspired. Maybe tonight, Andy. Maybe tonight.
It's streaming on the Sundance Now channel.
Fantastic. All right. Well, what do you think? Should we flick chart it?
Let's do it.
I am not optimistic.
I'm not either.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and you can see the list of films we've talked about on this show. If you tap the link, the word that says flickchart in your show notes, it should take you directly to this movie where you can add it to your list and see how it stacks up against ours.
First up, we have The Little Drummer Girl or Viridiana. Viridiana, please. The Little Drummer Girl or The Brood. I will take The Brood.
Yeah.
The Little Drummer Girl or the 1999 remake of The Thomas Crown Affair.
Thomas Crown.
I will take Thomas Crown as well. The Little Drummer Girl or Fast Company.
Now it gets harder.
I'm going to say The Little Drummer Girl. And I think it's just, the spy story over the car racing story, I think is where I end up falling.
The car racing story that was not a good car racing story.
It was fine, but I already forgotten most of the movie.
There you go. There you go. Because it's too fast, Andy. I'm with you. I'm Little Drummer Girl.
The Little Drummer Girl or Christmas in Connecticut. Oh, Christmas in Connecticut, please.
Hands down, yeah.
The Little Drummer Girl or the 1973 Battle for the Planet of the Apes. This is the final of the 5 original films.
I will watch
say
that
Planet
first.
of the Apes. Yep. The Little Drummer Girl or Wendy and Lucy. Oh, give me Wendy and Lucy. I'll take a slow-paced film about a girl who lost her dog.
I will take The Little Drummer Girl.
Really? Wendy and Lucy was a good one.
Really? You feel strongly about it? Because we're now
I
in
feel
the
strongly
weeds.
about it. I
You
know,
do?
but I feel strongly about Wendy and Lucy. I think it was much better. There's a lot more interesting character stuff just dealing with this woman trying to find her lost dog.
All right, fine. Take
Trust
the
me,
dog.
you put those on, you're going to rather watch it too.
Okay. That's what we have to imagine. Is actually, it's not that you have two movies and one TV. It's that you have two movies and two TVs, and you just have to figure out which one your eyes are naturally drawn to.
Yes, exactly. The Little Drummer Girl or Outbreak. Very timely.
Oh, for crying out loud. That helicopter.
I'm still taking Outbreak.
I am too, but I regret it.
We'll always forget Outbreak.
They don't call me trash bag for nothing.
That's right. All right, next up, Little Drummer Girl or The Hound of the Baskervilles, 1939.
I'm going to go with the dogs.
I am too. I'll take that. Well, that lands The Little Drummer Girl in spot 419 on our chart. 419 out of 446, which puts it at a 6%. Pretty
Wow.
low.
That's pretty low. It doesn't surprise me at all. How'd it do on your list?
Interestingly, very similar. It landed in spot 4,066 out of 4,308, which is also a 6%.
What?
I know,
What
crazy.
a synchronicity of math, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that you and I and you liked this movie better than I did, apparently. This ended up at 1401 on my list out of 1,442 movies, which is a 3%. I like this half as much as the rest of us did. And so according to, if I'm to go by the algorithm for letterboxd.com/the next reel, this should be a 0-star movie. I don't have a problem going with a 1 star. 0 stars seems pretty low, but I could go 1 star. I could be pushed up to 1.5. There are some people, some faces I like seeing in this thing, but I'm not going to watch it again.
You know, it was pretty disappointing. I don't feel like it warrants a 1 star. I feel like, you know, there are elements that work. There's a story that I find interesting that kind of goes through here. It's not told in a very effective way, but I still think that it's an interesting enough story to at least warrant it a 1.5. So I'm going to give it a 1.5 stars, no heart, though.
I will lean in with you. 1.5, no heart. I stand with Andy.
That's where we are.
Where do we go from here?
We're going to be wrapping up this short little John le Carré series with a much more recent adaptation. Not his most recent, but certainly one that got quite a bit of buzz. It is the 2011 Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with Gary Oldman playing George Smiley.
Oh, we get Smiley. We finally get a solid Smiley.
It is going to be a fun one. I cannot wait to talk about that film, especially as I just also watched that TV miniseries from 1979 with Alec Guinness for the first time. So it will be nice being able to compare these different films with their miniseries associates, I guess we could call them.
And not get distracted by how much we had trouble with it. What joy that might be.
Hear, hear.
When the movie ends.
Our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Now, we were living at the bottom of the barrel tonight, so we went up. We surfaced to try and find some positive reviews about this movie. And it turns out there were some people who really, who I don't know, they sort of liked it. I guess
think
there are
that's
people
fair to say.
who are enthusiastic about it, but their enthusiasm is not infinite for this movie.
I would love to have these people watch the miniseries and just get their take on comparing the two.
Okay.
I feel like a lot of these people are the sort of reviews where, like me, when I talk about, The Last Starfighter or something, it probably doesn't deserve my high praise that I give it, but it came at me at a point in my life where it still connects with me. So
totally.
I think that there's a lot of these in here.
Do you mind if I go first? I got one that actually has a point that I feel like I would like your reaction to.
Ooh.
I know. This one comes from Just a Guy, and who says, "It ain't what it appears to be," from April 30th, 2019. If you know anything at all about books and movies about espionage, intelligence, and related subjects, you will know that appearances can be deceiving. Hence the terms wilderness of mirrors et al. I have seen this movie 3 times now, and I have 3 completely different reactions. 1. When it came out, I thought it was a reasonably good action movie with a lousy female lead. Could not understand why they picked Keaton. 2. Later on, saw it again and thought it was rubbish. 3. Saw it 38 years after it came out. Now, I think le Carré is having us on. He's in the movie after all. I think he's taking the piss out of movie stars who become, quote, activists. Lines like, don't you want to do something more than sit-ins in Trafalgar Square or giveaways? Do more? Heck, she was switching sides. What she wanted was more positive reinforcement and someone to give her the lines. Remember, she was down to doing crap wine ads. Her fame had a leak in it. I think le Carré very cleverly made every know-nothing celebrity who, of course, supports the downtrodden look like fools. Well done, sir.
Well, that's quite a thesis.
It is.
It's an interesting perspective to take on it. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think that le Carré has such little thought of actors. I think that it became a fantastic way to kind of tell this story about the world of spies in a way that I think is incredibly obvious by pairing it with an actress, and it's all about playing roles. I think that it is pretty clear. I don't know. I guess I don't necessarily buy into this whole thing that he's just...
Well, I imagine you would have been more of a staunch kind of advocate of that angle because I can't imagine that being what the story is more or less about and having that not be a major thread in the miniseries.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And
I think there would be a lot more of that. Yeah.
Not there. All right. All right. Well, what do you got?
But still, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I've got a 5-star by Sandy Berman. Oh, good old Sandy. She says,
Sandy.
Too good to be missing. I'm gonna try to do my Sandy voice, okay?
Oh, good. Sandy, welcome to the show.
Here she comes. This film is unavailable from Blockbuster or Netflix or the library system. It is too important to be abandoned. I don't know why, if it is considered politically incorrect or too hot to handle or what. John le Carré wrote without an agenda, showing both sides, warts and all. I plan to loan it to as many people as will watch it. And I would just like to note, her format is VHS tape.
Wow. Fantastic.
So she will be, so when Sandy comes to your door with her VHS tape, be ready.
I'll be there. Thanks, Amazon. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We are highlighting adaptations from Season 9 over at our originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. That's the site where listeners can purchase the source material for all of our adapted film discussions.
We had a big Robin Hood series this season, looking at 9 different versions on screen. Many were likely adapted from Howard Pyle's The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, including Douglas Fairbanks in Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood, Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, and the 1991 Robin Hood, and Ridley Scott's Robin Hood.
Robin and Marian was specifically based on the ballad The Jest of Robin Hood.
And we really don't have too much to say about Robin and the Seven Hoods.
We talked Dead Ringers for our David Cronenberg series adapted from Barry Wood and Jack Geesland's novel Twins.
Have you checked out that show?
You know, I haven't, but I've heard great things.
2 comedies from our Steve Martin series were adaptations, Pennies from Heaven from the BBC series, and The Lonely Guy from the book by Bruce J. Friedman.
The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was part of our Colin Higgins series, adapted from the Broadway musical.
Spike Lee brought us Black Klansman from Ron Stallworth's memoir.
And we looked at a trio of John le Carré adaptations, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Little Drummer Girl, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Plus, all 3 movies in our Agnieszka Holland series were based on books, Europa, In Darkness, and Spore.
La Cage aux Folles and its remake The Birdcage both came from Jean Poiret's original play.
We also talked about Arsenic and Old Lace and Charade in our Cary Grant series.
All of these were based on other material, and it is all available on our originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. Every book purchased supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations we've covered and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.